ghosts, spirits, poltergeists, ghouls, goblins, demons, angels, supernatural entities. These are words to explain the different types of unnatural sources that haunt and roam our realm. My name is Bradley. Since I have experienced these types of entities firsthand, I believe it is time to show that experiences like this are not as uncommon as the gatekeepers want you to think. Now, whether you believe in these things or not, it doesn't mean they don't believe in you. Welcome to the other side of shadows. Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of The Other Side of Shadows. This is the debut episode of this podcast, and I do have another podcast I have been doing for a while called Creator's Dementia. It's a show, if you've listened to it, or if you're tuning into YouTube, you'll see the other podcast episodes of Creator's Dementia before this one, because all this is going into my Hidden Hollow Productions channel. But Creator's Dementia is a show about all things creative: writing, drawing, art, music, if I ever actually do an episode about music. And also it's dealing with anything that comes with the imagination. I do interviews of authors and things like that, but with this show is going to be different. This show is actually inspired by another podcast that I listen to religiously, I should say. It's called Midnight in Kentucky. So, like I was saying, this show is going to be different. Inspired by Midnight in Kentucky. You can find them on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube. I'm pretty sure they're on Apple as well. And but inspired by Midnight in Kentucky, I have decided to do my own podcast about paranormal occurrences, events, do my own paranormal research for occurrences that have happened around the world. And since I have actually experienced, certain forms of supernatural events, and while listening to MIK by Ben Foster, his interviews and his research has showed me that I'm actually not alone in experiencing things like this, and it gives me the courage to talk about certain events that have happened. And I know they got all these TV shows and stuff like that over on ID and whatever, but having a friend actually do research about paranormal events or other dimensional creatures that have came into Kentucky more than anything, it helps me want to actually dive into it more, to do some research and maybe find reasons why things like this occur. So, excuse me. So I'm lacing up my boots, and I'm diving straight into the other side of the shadow realm, and I'm gonna bring it home. And I have always believed if you talk about certain things of the supernatural nature, then it will find its way to you. So, that has actually always terrified me. That's why if I'm at home, I don't talk about it much. But if I'm at work or something and I experience just a little certain thing, then I might tell somebody about it because I feel safe. At home I kind of feel vulnerable, but I think it's actually time to address the other side, with fear and courage, so that way the darkness actually doesn't rule my fear. And I have heard many ghost stories. I've heard many occurrences and many different stories about what people have experienced throughout their lives when it comes to other worldly beings. And I want to research more into it, figure out what these creatures are, figure out maybe why they do what they do, and just to get a sense of knowledge about what's actually going on. I love me some coffee. But So with every episode, I am going to research a certain supernatural event that has occurred, and I'm going to talk about it, and hopefully I can bring people on here, and they can tell me their story, and we can get more occurrences, more events, and more research happening as we move along. So here I am, diving headfirst into the supernatural world of our world. So hopefully you'll enjoy the ride as we go. So before I get into the first event that I researched recently, I'm going to tell you one of mine. So when I was a kid, I lived out in the country, and in this little area, most of the family was not too far apart. My grandparents lived literally 50 yards away from my childhood home, and it was nice and safe there. Nothing ever really happened. The only crime that actually happened out there was at one point in time there was a peeping Tom looking through windows, but he wasn't dangerous. He was just a perv. But there was one night my grandma was really sick back in this time. This was before she passed away. God rest her soul. But what would happen is my grandfather was a constable, and if some certain citizens needed help inside the town, like a locked key in their car, something simple, he would go out there and help. So when he would travel in the night to go help the citizens of my hometown, I would walk the 50 yards from my home to my grandparents, and I would stay with my grandmother in case she needed anything. And I'm glad I got to do it because there was a lot of moments we spent together. A lot of times she was sleeping, but I was always there, and I got to experience a lot more with her before she passed away. So that part's comforting. But there was this one night. My grandpa had just came home. He unlocked a car for someone in town. And, he came in, he told me thank you, and I gave him a hug, and I told my grandmother bye, and I'd see her tomorrow, because usually every day after school I would always go to my grandma's house. That was just my place. I loved it there. And this particular night, I walked out the front door off their wooden porch, and what I was wearing, it's kind of funny. I had on swim trunks, a t-shirt, and flip-flops. And I don't wear flip-flops often. I only wear flip-flops around the house now. I don't hardly ever wear them outside. Maybe on vacation. But as I was walking back home, excuse me, I get maybe 10 yards from the edge of my grandparents' home, and all of a sudden I just felt a chill course up my arms and into my back. So I stopped, and usually if I walk, I'll keep my head down watching my feet go across the grass, and this is 9-10 o'clock at night right here. So I was watching, I could see the porch light of my home, just like I said, about 50 yards away, but I would always look down and watch my feet. So as I was heading home, I stopped, and I felt of extremely eerie presence, something I could not explain. I didn't know why. So I stopped and I looked up. Nothing was in front of me. It was just my home and the porch light. I looked to my right, and not 3 inches away stood a young girl with long black hair and a black dress. Now, some people could say mine was playing a trick on me. It was dark, and I was always terrified of the darkness, so it was just my mind trying to make sense of why I was fearful. I've heard that before. But this girl stood inches away and just stared at me. I did not freeze. Like 3 seconds in, after I saw her, I took off running, not home. I ran back to my grandparents' house. I ran in the door, shaking, almost crying, and my grandpa looked at me and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "There's a girl out there. I think she's a ghost." And I was terrified. My grandpa looked at me, did not at all tell me that it was probably my imagination. He just said, "Let me shine my light for you," because he had one of them big spotlights that are usually on cop cars. So he said, "Let me shine my light so that way you can get home." Like I said, not once did he say, "There's no ghost, you're seeing things." He just said, "I will shine the light for you." So I'll get back out there. My grandpa takes his big old police light, and I mean it's like a big old sun just streaming down to my home. I start walking. I get to the exact spot where I saw that little girl, and I turn, and she was gone. So I walk home. That was my first experience that I can remember dealing with the supernatural. It would be different. Like, I probably could have got convinced otherwise if my grandpa would have said, something. But he did not. He said that he would shine his light for me so I can make it home and not feel scared. Not once did he say I was seeing things or it's my imagination. So then and there, I knew that some people believed in this and some people, of course, don't. I mean, it's easy to be skeptical. You see and you feel what you believe. Other people can say, the grass is real because they can see it and they can feel it and they always know it. Some people will not recognize the fact that other worldly creatures exist out there. But I'm going to give you just a little bit of information, just a tidbit. My aunt told me long ago. Like I said, that was my first experience, not my only experience. That was my first. But my aunt told me long ago that there are certain people in our family that can see things like this. And some of the ones that can deny it, so they block it. But she gave me 5 people, and I'm not going to name all 5 because I'm not going to exploit my family out there. But she said there's 5 people in our family that can see things like this. And I was one of them. So, okay. And my grandma was also one of them. And so I guess that's why my grandpa did not try to convince me that I was hallucinating or my imagination was playing a trick on me, because he's probably experienced it with my grandma at some point, and he's probably even met that girl before. I don't know. I know stories, and later on in the show, not this episode, but later on in the show, I can tell you other stories involving my grandparents in the other world. So right then and there was my first experience ever dealing with the supernatural. So experiences like that will get you intrigued, and it never stopped. So I have finally developed the courage to completely come through and try to do some research and discuss certain things, like all these things. And it would be nice if one day I could do some good research and maybe figure out who that little girl was. I don't know. It's been so many years. Like I said, I was a teenager. preteen. So it's been a while. But anyways, in today's episode, we are taking a nocturnal ghostly trip towards the city about 2 hours away from me called Louisville, Kentucky. Now, some people call it Louisville, 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 but it's a town in northern Kentucky, and we are going to a place called Prospect in Jefferson County. We're going to be investigating Sleepy Hollow. Now, it's actually Sleepy Hollow Road. And this road, it is a roller coaster 2-lane blacktop highway. Trees surround the road, even offer a type of shelter as you venture with its thick bushel across both sides of the road. The trees are so thick that the moon can't even light your way among the winding road. Only headlights can guide your way in the night. On the sides of the road, guardrails keep you from falling off a 30-foot steep incline. Now, in the turn of the 19th century, settlers came across this northern piece of Kentucky. Though some sources of this haunted stretch of pavement come from an early time, evidence has been provided from a more younger clientele as research comes across my screen. Within the tale's past, Sleepy Hollow Road contained a covered bridge at the point where Hot Creek and Sleepy Hollow Lake converged. As the tales have been told, mothers throwing their unwanted burdened children off the bridge only to wash into the Ohio River will give this haunting place a spot of torment no matter what. When the night's moon shines a beam of light onto this bridge, people have said you can hear the screams of the helpless children, as well as the deafening cries of the sorrowful mothers that has tossed their children off this bridge. Now, this was a time when famine was beyond curable. So these women that could not even feed themselves had children, with unwanted pregnancies, and it even could be incestuous. They would take their children to this bridge, toss them off into the creek. So that alone causes for some haunting experiences to be showcased on this stretch of road. But even though people have heard the cries and the screams of the children at this bridge, there have also been reports, as time has passed, of a raven black hearse with extremely tinted windows haunts this winding road of Sleepy Hollow, tormenting civilians with a rush from behind and a push to be in the next lane right beside them. Now, some have said that this hearse will run you off the road and cause you to go off this 30-foot steep incline, and where you lose all perception of time. You may believe that you just crashed and were there minutes, but turns out it was hours. Now, other reports have said that this road can actually cause the occasional time warp, and it doesn't necessarily have to involve the black hearse. But people would be driving down this road in single-digit mileage, where they think only minutes have passed, but when they turn to look at their watch, it has perceived as time has sped and hours have gone by. So this road has something within its perimeter of a whole nother spiritual realm. But do not get Sleepy Hollow Road confused with the very famous novel Sleepy Hollow. They're the Headless Horseman legend does not reside in this stretch of Kentucky pavement, but it doesn't mean that terror isn't caused by other spiritual occupants. So, from the cries of unwanted, murdered children to these sorrowful mothers that have caused the deaths of all these children, and plus a black hearse that has seemed to terrorize that 2-lane road, have all been reported amongst Sleepy Hollow Road. Now, other reports, we are going to step aside from the tales of the doomed abandoned children, the time warps, and the very terrifying hearse that stalks you in the night while you drive along this road or even walk. We are actually going to go into another tale that comes from a place along the road that has been proclaimed as Devil's Point. I have tried to find more research about this, but not much has been reported about Devil's Point on Sleepy Hollow Road. But what I did find is in the late 70s, an area in the woods was a site for satanic rituals. A cult claimed a spot inside the wilderness and committed events that would chill you to the core. Now, what events, I'm not sure. This was from a interview on a website that I think it was the mayor of Jefferson. I think that's where it is. Yeah, the mayor in one of the cities of Jefferson County said that what he heard about the rituals that took place at Devil's Point is too heinous to report to a TV station or a newspaper. So he didn't go into much detail. But others have claimed that they have seen and heard chanting and screaming while noticing bonfires and figures wearing black robes along Devil's Point. Now, what they actually done during their rituals, as well as what they have practiced, I have not found any information on that, but I do plan to continue to look into it. So, Sleepy Hollow Road. The notes I made, I thought it'd be longer than this, but apparently I can read pretty fast. But the legend of Sleepy Hollow Road, I would like to So Sleepy Hollow Road is actually only 2 hours and 30 minutes from where I am. So maybe one day I might go venture over there just to see exactly what's going on. Now, they say that if you drive or stroll down that road during the day, not much happens. It all seems to happen in the shadows, at nighttime. In most parts of that road, the moon cannot find until it gets basically to the bridge. I know there'll be patches within the woodland surrounding this road, but it said that when the full moon shines onto what they call now the Crybaby Bridge, which was a wooden covered bridge long ago that has been reconstructed with steel and concrete, but when the moon shines onto that bridge, that's when you can hear the deafening cries and the sorrow and the wails from the abandoned children tossed off that bridge. That is when you can hear the terrifying sounds from all them victims and the murderers that had used that bridge for committing what they did. So Salem, listen at me. Apparently Salem needs to be a topic as well. Salem, Massachusetts. But Sleepy Hollow Road is Jefferson County and Oldham County. And it is, I think, if I saw it correctly, Sleepy Hollow Road is on Highway 1694. I'm pretty sure that's what it said. But yeah, it is only 2 hours and 30 minutes away. So, one day, if I get the courage to, 1694. One day, if I get the courage to actually go to the places that I'm going to be discussing and, check it out myself, which would be, pretty awesome to actually do. Get some actual findings and recordings and some true visuals. Maybe one day I can actually go up there and, take a look. Apparently during the day it is a serene and beautiful place. Especially during the fall when the leaves change and fall across the road. It's all the autumn colors, the orange and the red. But at night, that's when it becomes truly terrifying, with the black hearse, the screams and the cries from the children and the mother. I already said the black hearse. The time warp, where people will miss hours of their life when they honestly thought it was just minutes that passed by. But the whole Devil's Point, there's not much on that. When I type in Devil's Point, it takes me to Devil's Jump, which is a rumor to where the devil himself jumped off the cliff and landed on a raft onto that creek. So I don't know much about that one, but that's literally what pops up when I type in Devil's Point in Kentucky. So the only research that I can find about Devil's Point is the supposed cult that would do rituals, bonfires, and screams out in the woods on Sleepy Hollow Road. But that is it for this time. I mean, it is this lore it's a very interesting lore when it comes to Sleepy Hollow Road. If anyone has ever actually ventured there, you can, send me a message at creatorsdementia@gmail.com, and, you can tell me about it. I would love to discuss it, and I use that email because it's also attached to my other podcast, so that way I can, keep it away from my business email, or personal email, I should say. Creators Dementia is, that email address is my business address, so, you can just send me a message or a story at creatorsdementia@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in to the very first episode of The Other Side of Shadows. It has been really fun researching legends and lore of a local haunted road. I mean, it's only 2 hours and 30 minutes away, and it's in my state, Kentucky, so I consider it local. But if you know of any other hauntings that you would like to hear about, feel free to let me know, and I would be more than happy to do some research and discover more supernatural things out there that I can discuss within this podcast. This is going to be a whole new venture for me, and I cannot wait to just dive into more things. So hopefully with the next one there will be a lot more story to it, so that way this next episode will actually be a little bit longer, but I guess this is a good one for a debut episode. But join me next week as we are going to dive into the Liberty Hall located in Frankfort, Kentucky, and it has been told that 3 spirits will haunt visitors that journey inside this hall. So we are going to figure out what spirits those are, possibly where they came from, who knows. And you'll also get to hear another supernatural experience I had before we talk about Liberty Hall, because I have plenty. So thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Whichever platform that you listen to, or if you're watching on YouTube, because this is, like I said, going into my Hidden Hollow production YouTube channel. And I just want to say thank you again. Hopefully this has been entertaining and informative. So until we meet again, Shadow Watchers, keep your eye on the shadows. The Other Side of Shadows is brought to you by Hidden Hollow Productions. Thank you for your eyes and ears as we take a look into the other side. Many unexplained occurrences are reported each and every day by the ones chosen to tell a story. If you have a story to tell, feel free to email me at creatorsdementia@gmail.com. Until next time, stay protected and stay open.